These two guys have Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackey and Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
Hey, and welcome into Mackey and Judd, where I've got sports flowing through my veins and also some drugs, although all legal, nothing too strong. Zolgad back from emergency appendectomy surgery. Mackey, you don't see on the screen because he has COVID. We are officially a mess. Executive producer Declan Goff, who's being harassed by the people in his apartment building because they're upset his dog is barking too much. And the only sane one of the group, shockingly enough, as far as I know, he's not sick, thank God. Everything's fine. His family's great. That's great, too. Darren Doogie Wolfson, who's kind enough to join us with some Tuesday scoops. What's up, sir? But maybe some computer.
What's up, Judd? This is your Michael Jordan 1998 Finals game. This is your Ronnie Lott, the former 49er safety, the Hall of Famer, once cut the top of his finger off to continue playing in a game. Like, this is comparable, right? Days ago, that, yeah. Like literally, 72 hours ago, you undergo emergency appendectomy surgery, and here you are. So, Judd, it's fantastic to see you. I'm glad you're okay. Declan, your neighbor is a bleep hole. I feel for you. I apologize for having to deal with such BS. Buy a house when you can. You and your significant other, whenever you can, even though it's not a great market to be buying, buy a house.
Working on it.
Let's get out of that apartment. Yeah, I know you are. So continue to work on it. Judd, you're being awfully presumptuous. Trust me. Wife is very, it's not a real tough day. I'm taking the boys over to your neighborhood pool.
Nice.
In a couple minutes. It's the last day for the St. Louis Park pool today. So I'm going to go hang at the pool with the boys. And outside of that, we hung at the Twins game last night, but the wifey's very mad at me, right? Nothing is ever enough, right? Mow the lawn, but you got to do this, that, everything else. So I would say things are okay. My health, I'm fine. The kids go back to school on Monday, but I'm telling you, Judd, to suggest things are, quote, great, that's an overstatement.
Well, they're as good as possibly can be probably for you compared to us. So anyway,
sure.
All right, let's get right to the scoops. I was in a hospital bed on Monday, but as I did get some good news, and that's sanity prevailed at the TCO Performance Center where the Vikings traded for Nick Mullens, who, look, nobody's saying that this is the greatest trade of all time, and it's a quarterback depth move, but I think after what we saw, especially probably Saturday, the preseason game, sounds like it scared him because Mannion really can't play, and Mond is just so raw. Your thoughts, and what can you tell us about a decision that will definitely impact the Vikings if Kirk Cousins has to miss even a game?
Yeah, even though Cousins, I think we take his durability for granted at times, although it's possible, right? He's already gotten COVID twice. What if he gets it a third time, like last year, has to miss one game to the two names you just threw out? The Vikings aren't willing to say, Judd, that Nick Mullens is the number 2, but trust me, they don't make this move for Nick Mullens to then not make the team or be the number 3. I get the conditions of the 2024 7th-round pick. He has to make the team or be active for a game here in 2022 for the pick to convey. The pick is going to convey. The Vikings are giving the Raiders a 2024 7th-round pick because Nick Mullens is now this team's number 2 quarterback. A necessary move. My understanding is it wasn't just Mullens or bust. They made some other calls, not ready to quite say some names. It doesn't really matter at this point. They weren't really willing to do much beyond a 7th-round pick. But this trade makes sense. The Raiders have 2 quarterbacks in front of Mullens. Mullens has a starting history. He can operate this offense. He has a history with Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. This move, when it broke on Monday, I was like, yeah, okay. That makes complete sense. I was on TV on Sunday night. I didn't necessarily know the name, but it's what we've talked about. I spewed it out on TV on Sunday night. I said, the number 2 quarterback is not on this roster. Then lo and behold, 12 hours later, the news breaks of Nick Mullens now being a Viking. But make no mistake, I know the Vikings didn't want to volunteer the information on Monday, Judd, but he is their number 2 quarterback. He is going to make the 53-man roster. The question is, do they let go Sean Mannion today with multiple more roster moves needed? by 3 o'clock Central, 4 o'clock Eastern, or do they wait a little bit on Mannion? But I don't foresee Sean Mannion being a part of the 53-man roster. Now, with the new practice squad rules, would there be some value in having him as some sort of de facto quarterbacks coach? He's really close with Kirk Cousins. In fact, when I was at that practice on Thursday, the joint practice with the 49ers, I was standing next to Mrs. Cousins for a bit, Don Cousins, Kirk's dad. They were talking about Sean and rooting on Sean. I get the feels. I mean, it's something I'd heard already, but just experiencing being next to the family, them cheering on Sean, it seems like Kirk and Sean have a really good relationship. So with these new practice squad rules, would the Vikings consider, adding Mannion to the practice squad? It's not like anybody else is picking him up. And if he's on the practice squad, he's a de facto coach. That's something I'll be looking at. But Sean Mannion is not making the 53-man roster. That we know.
Dukes, what other quarterbacks were they potentially in on? Obviously they saw Mullens in the first preseason game. Do you know any insight or anyone they were maybe checking in on or kicking tires on to look for if before they landed Nick Mullens from the Raiders?
I'm not sure, Declan, but if we want to make this a reckless speculation Tuesday on a Thursday or Thursday on a Tuesday, I mean, Mason Rudolph of Pittsburgh is seemingly out there. There's some other guys as well, but my understanding it wasn't just, hey, let's call the Raiders. Let's see if we can get Mullens. If it's not Mullens, we'll stick with what we have. I don't want to suggest that they casted this incredibly wide net, but they certainly reached out to more than the Raiders. Hopefully I'll have an update for you on that on Thursday morning.
Dukes, what do we think this means to Mond as well? Because I think I changed my stance after he had a decent game against, and it was not great, but it was certainly I think an improvement on what he's trying to practice in the first preseason game. And then he comes back in the second one and is awful. I had changed my stance before that to, I think he's a practice squad guy, to I think he might be the third guy. And now I'm not sure. So from the folks that you've talked to, do you get the sense that they would like to keep him on the 53 as the third guy, or that they think that there is a viable chance that if they do waive him, that he would clear that process and then could just be signed back to practice squad?
Well, I do think this preseason game, this third game, this Denver game, will certainly have a say in that. Now, I will tell you, the Mond camp doesn't foresee him being let go. They don't think he's hitting the waiver wire. I get it. Would he for sure get claimed? I think he would, but I'm not 100% convinced of that. I think he would. I'm certainly more on the side of over 51% chance likelihood that he would get claimed, but I'm not at 100%. But I'm not quite sure the Vikings are ready to roll those dice, because in an ideal world, sure, he clears waivers. You re-sign him to the practice squad if that's something that he would choose, by the way. I'm not even quite sure in an instance like that he would say, okay, yeah, I'll go back to Minnesota. I think right now, Judd, barring some sort of catastrophic performance in Denver, I think he does make the 53. I just don't think they're ready to cut the cord, but I'm telling you, let's see how he does next weekend in Denver.
Dukes, I was looking too at their tight end depth after watching Zach Davidson drop passes, and I know Johnny Munn, I believe, was inactive for the second game, and looks like Irv Smith is tracking. He was a limited participant in practice on Monday at least, so he's getting healthy. He looks like he's in great shape. But when they get down to the 53 here and other teams cut tight ends, what's the possibility that the Vikings could potentially even add maybe another depth tight end behind Irv Smith Jr.?
Well, it's a good inquiry, Declan, because Kendall Blanton, who started the role for the Rams, was just waived the other day. So without his, service time being, 5 years or more, he had to hit the waiver wire. Hits the waiver wire. Well, it turns out the Vikings didn't put in a claim. Now, Washington did. He's going to Washington. The word is Kansas City did, but Washington ahead of Kansas City pecking order-wise. So he is now a commander. But I thought, okay, Kevin O'Connell history with this tight end. He took over when Higbee went down for LA. I'm thinking, if you want a depth tight end, Kendall Blanton would have made all sorts of sense. The Blanton camp looked at the Vikings and said, you know what? That's a really good situation. We'd love for Kendall to end up there. But it didn't happen. And so that makes me wonder, Declan. Now, it might depend on who specifically hits the wire. Like, I'm not dismissing the idea, but I just thought Blanton made all sorts of sense, and the Vikings were not in whatsoever on him. But it is something I'm keeping an eye on. There's no doubt about that, especially after Davidson's performance in that last game. Like, he did have a good first couple weeks of camp. I was with him at a workout in Woodbury in mid-July. I told you guys I thought he looked really good, but he has taken a noticeable step backwards the last week or so, not just in the game Saturday, but also in those joint practices.
Yeah, I think the one thing about that spot where we have to change our thinking a bit too, though, is this. I think they're counting on Irv Smith to come back, possibly for the first game against the Packers. But the reality is this: outside of Irv Smith, I don't know how much they're going to rely on their tight ends to catch passes, and I think they're going to rely on them when they're in there to block. And so I think from really the second tight end on down, whoever makes it the priority is going to be as a blocker. And that's not a bad thing, because we're also going to see more use of 3 receiver sets that are going to take advantage of the third guy. So, like, I do think we're from the school of, well, the tight end has to catch. Well, yeah, that's great, but it can be a bonus too. The most important thing is, can you block? I think that's where things are going to change. So we actually might be putting more of a priority on catching the ball for a backup tight end than the coaching staff will, if they feel that the player can contribute as a blocker when he's actually used.
I agree, which means Ben Ellefson has a pretty good chance to make the 53 man. He's a better blocker than Davidson. Johnny Munt is going to make the 53 man. Irv Smith Jr., who's not a good blocker, by the way.
Right.
But maybe he's improved ever so slightly the last time we saw him on the field compared to, let's say, his rookie year or his time at Alabama. But Irv Smith Jr. is going to make the 53 man. So right now, it looks like those 3 tight ends make the 53 man, and the Vikings don't keep a 4th tight end.